Sloan back on 700 WLW. Are we in the fourth industrial revolution? What? The what? Fourth industrial revolution. The first one was coal and steam power. Second revolution was gas. Third was the digital revolution beginning in the late 1960s. And the fourth one, which we think is here, is the evolution of AI. So the fourth industrial revolution, artificial intelligence. And we just saw this play out with the longshoremen's fight against automation. A lot of people thought it was about money. And the company gave them, offered a 50% raise to begin with. They wanted 75. Money clearly wasn't the object there. It was, who the hell's getting a 50 to 75% raise? The big sticking point was automation, robots, and AI. And so the longshoremen looks like they won, but eventually, like everything else in history, will lose. And not just to point that stick, the poopy end of the stick at the longshoremen, but we saw this play out with the United Auto Workers. They went on strike over pay, but a big part of that was automation. We saw the Writers Guild of America and Hollywood go on strike over, AI and automation. Essentially, they're coming after our jobs, but technology has always been coming after our jobs, at least until now. Chris MacKenzie's here. He's with a nonprofit called Americans for Responsible Innovation. They cover AI policy and the public interest. Chris, welcome.
Hi, Scott. Good to be on with you.
We've always had fear of the unknown. We have FOMO now, but we also had fear of the unknown. Those two factors go together like peanut butter and jelly. Go back to the days of the caveman, right? Here's four cavemen, and they're, I don't know, what do they carry out? Pelts. They've got their pelts, different pelts of things, and pelts. And we're bringing pelts here, and we need pelts for the winter. Pelts. And some guy goes, hey, what if we took this thing, we'll call it a wheel, and now we just need one guy. We don't need four. Well, you're going to put me out of a job. This isn't anything different.
That's a good point. Resistance to automation, I like to say, is a story as old as jobs themselves, right? Whether you're talking about lamplighters protesting the advent of the street lamp or textile workers' strikes that shook England during the Industrial Revolution, this story has been playing out for a long time. And as you noted earlier, we're in a moment of rapid technological change with AI right now that is similar to the Industrial Revolution in a lot of ways. It's likely to increase productivity. Mm-hmm. It will probably benefit consumers in many ways over the long run. But in the short run, it's likely to displace millions upon millions of workers. And the key difference here, something to keep in mind, is in its pace. The Industrial Revolution took place over many, many decades. The first commercial steam engine was designed in 1712. Mm-hmm. Then it took 70 years after that before we put the steam engine into a train, and then 40 years before that locomotive train was common. Compare that to AI. ChatGPT was released a couple years ago, and companies across the economy are already trying to figure out how does this fit into their business and what pieces of their business can be automated.
Which has all of us in the work sector looking over our shoulders. And it's not just manufacturing and ports and shipping and car manufacturing. Accountants, lawyers, software engineers, graphic designers, drivers, with AI and autonomous vehicles. All that and many, many more fields are now in jeopardy when they once were. You thought, hey, I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer, I'm an engineer, I'm set for life. No, that's not true anymore.
That's absolutely true. Depending on your field, the AI will impact employment in different ways and at a different pace. What's expected to happen is that AI will probably impact the industries of retail, moving and shipping first. And but in the long run, again, as you noted, it'll impact a really broad range of sectors, including sectors that we previously thought were safe from automation.
Yeah. And if you're listening here, I don't want them taking my job. They take someone else's job, but they better not come after mine. And I'm sure that's what the longshoremen, the dock workers are thinking. However, I just read this. So the World Bank, they do an annual report on port efficiency. There's about 348 total ports in this report. Not a single U.S. port is in the top 50. As a matter of fact, the three biggest ports that union represents, which would be Baltimore, New York, and Houston, were no higher than 300th on that list out of 348 in total. We're falling behind the rest of the world, and the problem with that is if you look at other countries, they're way ahead of us in efficiency. We used to lead the world in this, and we're not anymore. It's unacceptable. So many American ports are struggling to keep up with the rest of the world, and it's a bottleneck literally at our ports. And the union's position, that's good for us. It's not good for America, though.
You're correct in saying that U.S. ports are behind the rest of the world in automation. we see ports, especially in Europe, that are much more automated than U.S. ports in China that are more automated. In the long run, I think we can expect that AI and other forms of automation will be implemented at U.S. ports. And really, this is a battle over the short run and how it impacts the current workers at those ports.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes sense, and the union's fighting for what they perceive are good jobs, and they don't want to give up an inch of ground because they know. But ultimately, Harold Daggett, the president of the ILA, he knows this is coming. I mean, he made a statement that I saw and made my jaw drop about. He said, once we allowed automatic tolling on throughways and highways and turnpikes, that like Easy Pass came along, and he said all those good union jobs are gone. I guess that's why they still pump gas by hand in Jersey. It's to protect jobs, and meanwhile, technology has lapped them.
I think you're right. What we know is that there is a large displacement of U.S. workers coming because of the AI revolution. Now, policymakers, unions, employers have some successful examples from history to draw on for how we can help workers transition into the future workforce.
Yeah.
During the Industrial Revolution, we created the public education system, and we implemented worker protections over a number of years that helps to create the factory jobs that we now look back on and say, well, that was a good job. That was a good paying job, and we missed that, right? The GI Bill is another example that helps 8 million World War II veterans find work back in the U.S. after the end of the war. Of course, we're facing a displacement of workers much larger than 8 million workers. By some estimates, it's going to be 47% of the U.S. workforce that's impacted by the implementation of AI.
Wow. And that brings up a whole host of other questions is, all right, we've got a lot of people and there's not enough jobs for everybody. How do we survive? Things like universal basic income have come into play. I've also heard people like, I don't know, it was Bill Gates, someone like that. It's an idea that's been around for a while, which involves actually taxing the AI and taxing the robots as if they were a real worker.
It's possible. I think what we need right now are big ideas, both in education and in worker protection specifically. Over the immediate term, one of the things that Congress can do is implement protections to make sure that AI is not used in an invasive, privacy intruding way on workers to overly monitor their productivity in a way that's dehumanizing.
How do we grow out of this then? Again, it's Chris MacKenzie with Americans for Responsible Innovation. We're talking about the longshoremen's strike that was short-lasting, but the impact here is about AI. It wasn't about the money as much as it was about robots and AI taking over jobs for the longshoremen, which they fought against, continue to fight against, and haven't given up an inch of ground. But we know technology ultimately, regardless of where it is, always wins, and we're going to see that with AI. What does that mean for all of our jobs, though? 40% of the jobs we have now are displaced. What happens in the future, and how do we carve out a space for the American worker to remain? We need jobs. We need money to put food on the table. Our economy collapses if we don't have jobs.
You're correct. There are jobs that we'll have in the future that we can't imagine right now because of AI. Before the advent of computers, a lot of the jobs that we're doing today, we could not have imagined. It did destroy jobs. There was a process of creative destruction where many workers were displaced, but it also created jobs. Even if you look at ports, there are jobs operating automatic, cranes and highly autonomous vehicles that we could not have imagined 40 years ago. The number of people those ports employ is different, but there are new jobs that are on their way because of this technological change as well.
Does it make a sense, Chris, then to fight, if you're a worker or existing worker, whether it's unions or not, to protect workers from market forces instead of unsafe working conditions? There's still plenty of jobs out there that are a little bit more dangerous than others, but clearly in the last 100 years in the Industrial Revolution, we're a lot safer than we've ever been in the workplace because of the union and because of rules and regulations. And so as a result of this thing, now maybe more of the focus is on the market forces, which here would be AI. Is that, I guess in the union sense, is that how they continue to stay relevant? Because worker safety seems pretty good.
I think you're actually going to see two types of resistance to automation and the implementation of AI from workers and unions. One is the replacement of jobs, which workers are going to protest because they don't want to see their jobs evaporate.
Yep.
And the second is the unfair implementation of AI that negatively impacts workers on the job, right? And again, I turn to privacy as an example, where we see some companies have implemented AI in a way that monitors employees' every move in a very intrusive way. It monitors their click movements, maybe, if you're on a computer. And we're probably going to see some resistance to that as well. So I would describe those as kind of the two paths of resistance that we'll likely encounter as AI is implemented.
All right. It's pretty scary, though, that half the jobs in America are under threat from AI right now, which would totally upend the apple cart. But as you said, and I think of this often, is that kids today, if you're in school, you're training for a job that does not yet exist. We always find a way to, for example, the computer was supposed to make our lives easier. Oh, my gosh, we'll have all this free time. It's made it harder. Isn't that going to happen with AI?
It'll make some things easier. It'll make some things harder. You know, we have the computer now. It's made shopping easier, for example. I have access to a whole world of products that I did not used to have. I think the computer's a really informative example because in many ways it's made the lives of consumers easier. It's given consumers access to many products and things that they did not used to have access to. But it's created new types of work. And in some cases, it feels like it's made life harder for everyday workers in our economy.
Yeah, it feels that way. It's supposed to be, oh, God, we'll spend all day going shopping with our, going out with our family and hanging out. No, we just spend all our days in front of a screen. Now, granted, it's TikTok, it's Facebook, it's other things. But, if you think the nature, we work more hours than we used to in some cases. We've seen those studies come out going, we're actually spending more time working away from work than it used to be in the old days. We'd punch the clock in 8-hour shift, 10 hours, whatever. We'd go home. We'd have the rest of our lives. And now it just follows us home. That's the point.
Yeah, as you noted, computers, it depends on how you frame it, right? Some people look at computers and they say, well, they've made us much more productive. But at the same time, how does that productivity manifest for workers themselves? Sometimes that's people checking their phones after 5 p.m. The same can be said of AI. It'll make workers more productive. But how does that productivity manifest? Is that in, monitoring workers' every move, every click, and we need to make sure protections are in place so that it's not implemented in a dehumanizing or unfair way.
Yeah, exactly. How quickly is this happening? We know AI is moving exceptionally fast. I mentioned the 4 industrial revolutions with coal and gas and the digital revolution of the 60s, but this one is moving faster than all 3 of those.
That's a really good question. What we've seen with past eras of technological transformation is that it comes in kind of a J curve, right? You see the implementation of technology, you see companies trying to figure it out, and there's a moment of actually not increasing productivity, but almost decreasing productivity as companies are still trying to slot this technology into their business model and figure out a way to make them more productive. And then there's a period of rapid transformation, of rapidly increasing productivity, and we haven't hit that yet. We're still in the phase where companies are looking at this tech and trying to figure out how to implement it. But we will soon see that era of rapid transformation.
And I would suggest, too, that we're going to see a host of other careers develop as a result of AI that we don't know, as we mentioned before. And so ultimately, it scares the hell out of us because right now you're going, wow, my job may be eliminated. It's probably not going to be tomorrow, but you ought to be looking over your shoulder.
That's true. Your job won't be eliminated tomorrow. And I think what's important to think about is how can bringing AI into your work also help make you more productive as someone who's an employee, right? Because it can help make employees more competitive piece of the workforce if they are able to find ways to implement AI in their own work.
He's Chris MacKenzie with the nonprofit Americans for Responsible Innovation. They handle AI policy in the public interest, not necessarily pro-AI, but figuring out how it all works. And now maybe you got some questions answered, but there's probably, listening to this, you probably have more questions than answers at this point, which I get, but it's so rapidly changing. If you're older, it'll affect you a little less. In retirement, it'll affect you because AI will be doing more for you. But if you're in the workforce and you're relatively young or middle-aged, this is the future you're facing, as we all have. It's a technological challenge. America is about innovation. We always lean into that. We don't shy away from it, or we shouldn't anyway. Chris, all the best. Thanks again.
Thank you, Scott.